Chapter 16, Manage Change and Organizational Learning. In our opening vignette, we see that organizational change can be a true challenge to manage, particularly when it involves layoffs or other factors negatively affecting workers. When you have completed reading Chapter 16, you should be able to discuss the external and internal forces that can create the need for organizational change, describe Lewin's change model and the systems model of change, and explain Kotter's 8 steps for leading organizational change. Further, you should be able to review the 11 reasons employees resist change, identify alternative strategies for overcoming resistance to change, and discuss the process organizations use to build their learning capabilities. One of the most challenging issues facing today's managers is organizational change. Change can be frightening to many long-time organizational members and is oftentimes vigorously resisted. In implementing change strategies in an organization, managers need to carefully prepare and research both the internal and external environments. Sometimes the need for change comes from outside the organization. External forces for change can be found in many variables, including demographic characteristics of the environment, technological advancements, customer and market changes, and social and political pressures. However, sometimes the need for change originates within the organization itself. Internal forces for change can include such factors as low job satisfaction, low productivity, high turnover, or conflict. Kurt Lewin developed the force field model for change. In this model, the reasons or needs for change, or the factors involved in the change process, come from both outside and inside the organization. In addition, the forces can either be in favor of or resisting the change, either from outside or inside the organization. Lewin suggested that once forces resisting the change are identified, that the organization must find ways to help loosen the commitment to those factors. This process is called unfreezing. The focus of unfreezing is to create the motivation to change. The process begins by discounting the usefulness or appropriateness of employees' present behaviors or attitudes. Once the target or goal of the change process has been identified and the original positions of employees have loosened, then the change process can be implemented. Organizational change can be aimed at improvement or growth, or it can focus on solving a problem such as poor customer service or low productivity. The change process can be targeted at different levels in an organization, as well as the organization as a whole. The next step in Lewin's model is to refreeze new attitudes and behaviors associated with the change. That is, change is stabilized by helping employees integrate the changed behavior or attitude into their normal way of doing things. This also gives employees the chance to exhibit new behaviors which are then reinforced. Next, we shift our attention to the systems model. The systems model of change is based on the premise that any change, no matter how large or small, has a cascading effect throughout an organization. The systems model of change focuses on mission statements and strategic plans. A mission statement is designed to summarize why an organization exists. It informs stakeholders of what the organization's values are, its products, services, customers, and goals. A strategic plan is a long-term plan, usually looking 3 to 5 years into the future, that outlines what the organization's goals are and what actions are needed to achieve these results. Continuing our discussion of the systems model of change identifies the target elements of change. These are simply defined as the components of an organization that may be changed. These components include the organizational arrangement, social factors, methods, and people. The systems model of change is tied directly with the strategic planning process. The targets for future growth and vitality are identified through the systems model approach in the planning phase of change management. The organization uses the systems model as a diagnostic framework to help determine the causes of an organizational problem and to propose solutions. As you can see, Table 16-1 provides an 8-step approach to leading change in organizations. The table identifies each step and provides a description as to how each step will be implemented and what its goals are. For example, in establishing a sense of urgency, the goal is to unfreeze the organization by creating a compelling reason for why change is needed. The third step is the development of a vision and strategy. Here, the vision and strategic plan are created to guide the change process. Once the change has been implemented, step 8, anchor the new approaches in the culture, is followed. Here, the organization reinforces the changes by highlighting connections between new behaviors and processes and organizational success. Let's now turn our attention to organizational development, or OD, which is defined as a set of techniques or tools that are used to implement organizational change. There has been a considerable amount of research in the OD area revealing that planned organizational change does work. Change programs are more successful when they are geared towards meeting both short and long-term results. Organizational change is more likely to succeed when top management is truly committed to the change program and the effectiveness of OD interventions is affected by cross-cultural considerations. Continuing our discussion from the previous slide, Table 16-2 identifies 5 organizational development interventions for implementing change. These include the use of survey feedback, process consultation, team building, intergroup development, and technostructural activities. As we stated at the outset of this chapter, change and change management can be a daunting task. We have noted that people have a tendency to resist change in the workplace. Some of the reasons for this include an individual's predisposition towards change, that is, that any change from the status quo is bad. Often, employees are distrustful of the intentions of management. They may have a fear of failure or feel that their jobs are in jeopardy, and there may be peer pressure to resist any change. Other reasons why employees may resist change in the workplace include the disruption of traditions or group relationships. There may be personality conflict, the timing may not be right, and the organization may have tried changes in the past but has not been successful. Research has found that there are strategies that can be deployed to help minimize or mitigate the resistance to change in the workplace. Table 16.3 provides detailed information on the strategies, when to use them, and what the advantages and disadvantages are for each strategy. For example, education and communication are commonly used where there is a lack of information or inaccurate information and analysis within the organization. The advantages of this approach is that once persuaded, people will often help with the implementation of the change. The drawback of education and communication is that it can be very time-consuming if there are a lot of people involved. The last strategy displayed in our table is the use of explicit and implicit coercion. This is appropriate where speed is essential and where the change initiators possess considerable power. The advantage to this approach is that it is speedy and can overcome any kind of resistance. However, the drawback is that it can be risky if it leaves people angry at the initiators of the change. A relatively new focus in the study of organizations and change is on the learning organization. A learning organization proactively creates, acquires, and transfers knowledge throughout the organization. Figure 16-2 demonstrates how to build an organization's learning capability. Notice the outcomes of customer satisfaction, organizational performance, sales growth, and profitability. What are an organization's learning capabilities? Learning capabilities are defined as a set of core competencies and internal processes that enable an organization to adapt to its environment. The facilitating factors involved in building an organization's learning capability represent the internal structure and processes that affect how easy or hard it is for learning to occur and the amount of effective learning that takes place. We close our discussion by considering the various ways that an organization may attempt to create and maximize learning. These learning modes are classified as analytical learning, a systematic gathering of internal and external information; synthetic learning, emphasizing the synthesis of large amounts of complex information by using systems thinking; experimental learning, a rational methodological approach based on conducting experiments and monitoring the results; interactive learning, learning by doing; structural learning, based on the use of organizational routines; and institutional learning, a process by which organizations model values, beliefs, and practices either from their external environments or from senior executives. As Figure 16-2 of the textbook shows, learning modes are directly influenced by an organization's culture and experience or history. This concludes the lecture on Chapter 16. Apply the concepts that you've learned in the end-of-chapter materials, such as the ethical dilemma, is there an ethical way to implement downsizing without hurting your best employees? And take a practice quiz on the Online Learning Center, www.mhhe.com/KINICKIOB4E.